Good morning.
Good morning.
Another
So,
fine.
ChayaLeah, I heard you have a big announcement today.
I do.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
What?
Well,
What's big
I heard you're leaving the podcast to become a professional slot machine gambler.
I am so good at slot machines. I can't explain it to people. I have a strategy.
Is it true that they were banning you?
Yeah.
You won so much they asked you to please leave Vegas? There was a rumor.
Listen, I'll just say one thing. Like playing slots, I felt the machine manipulating me in real time. It wasn't even after. As I was sitting there, I'm like, I am being manipulated in this moment by this machine. And it felt so good. Like it felt the endorphins and dopamine and everything that was hitting my brain. It was really good. What can I tell you? So take a few pennies.
Glad to know that this is the
you know what they say. You know what they say.
What?
Let them.
Let
it.
No, my book is called Stop It.
This is good.
Stop it.
This is good. This is education. Now,
wait, is gambling allowed?
Why don't we even have like a show on gambling?
I know. Are you allowed to gamble according to Jewish law? I mean, I shouldn't ask.
Well, in the ancient days, if you were a gambler, your testimony wouldn't be accepted.
Really?
The postulatus, yes.
Wow.
Yes, because it's almost different with a casino. But if you're gambling against each other,
right,
it's almost like thievery because you're getting something for nothing. So like people used to bet with dice, and people used to bet with birds racing and all of that stuff. So those people that were doing this, they were not accepted as good witnesses because they were like considered sinners.
Really,
gambling. It's a little different now with the casinos because you're playing against the house,
right?
So it's not the house knows this is their business, but betting between each other is sort of a form of gazela, for a form of
it's
stealing.
Interesting. People often are surprised that Orthodox Jews would gamble, but it reminds me of like smoking. It's not against halacha. It's not against Jewish law to smoke or gamble. It just
some rabbis think it's against Jewish law.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because
right.
You should guard your
body.
Once you knew that it's dangerous.
Yeah.
Now you know that it's dangerous. If you didn't know, okay, it's one thing. But now that you know that it causes cancer.
That's interesting.
But it's never been prohibited. I mean,
right.
There are still many Orthodox Jews that smoke. But gambling is different. Gambling it's a waste of time. They'll tell you, because you should be studying Torah. I mean, what are you doing? And even if you're not studying Torah, this is the place to be in a casino. I mean, that's so
it's gross.
Okay, so I just come up with a new slot machine.
Oh,
it's a slot machine. It teaches you Torah.
Yeah.
As every time you pull the arm, it gives you some Maimonides or Rashi insight.
And if you hit 3 Maimonides, you win.
Oh my God.
That's right. Exactly.
That would be so funny. But
trust me, if you could marry gambling and Torah study, you'd have a lot more Torah study.
That's true. That's true. Gamifying it all. It is true. But yes, right. I mean, even in the depths of that, there was holiness. We spent a Shabbos there and just felt very holy in the spiritual city of Las Vegas.
What?
I'm just saying.
What are you saying? Could you say? Can you repeat that again?
That note,
you felt holy in the city of Las Vegas.
You can.
Yeah. Okay.
Wow. Some people like what I say. You're the only person that I say something and you get. What do you say?
I'm the only person. All of our listeners are joining me. They're saying, now what? What's she talking about holiness in Las Vegas?
Okay. Did King Solomon ever go back to Las Vegas? That is my question.
He didn't have to. Yeah. Vegas came to him.
That's true.
He was so rich and powerful. Everybody came to him. I think that was the problem.
Yeah.
The problem was that society opened its doors. And let's pick up the story.
Okay, so we're continuing with the Book of Kings. And we read through the death of David. Last episode we did King David dies and Solomon takes over and he builds the temple. And we read about some of his follies. Is that a word? It is, right? Yes. Follies?
No? Yeah. Follies, sure.
Does that make sense here? Okay. Mm-hmm. And so we're picking up around chapter 11, which starts out talking about how King Solomon loved many foreign women. And it mentions specifically the daughter of Pharaoh. And then it lists a bunch of other types of women that he loved and brought into the land. And so I'm starting because I read something really interesting, but it says in the Talmud, why, on the question about why it says specifically the daughter of Pharaoh.
Right.
And it says in the Talmud, this is a crazy story, that when he married the princess of Egypt, the angel Gabriel was so upset that he threw a rod onto the earth, which landed in the middle of the water, and land grew around the rod and created a landmass, and that became the city of Rome. And Rome ended up destroying the second temple. And so the rabbis in the Talmud are like, well, that story doesn't sound real. So they explain that it's a metaphor because this was the beginning of the moral decline of the Jewish people. It started with King Solomon marrying this Egyptian princess and bringing her into Jerusalem and into his home. And it ends with the destruction of the second temple by the Romans. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of interesting.
That event, that's very interesting. That is, because until then, I think it was. I mean, till now, we've been reading for a pretty homogeneous society.
Right.
Besides the people that were living there, I mean, the inhabitants that were there, but you didn't find many people like immigrating to Israel.
Right.
You know, you had basically the Jewish people and you had the indigenous people that were there, but the Jews, controlled it and was the government. And there were scrimmages. I mean, we had in the time of the Shaftim, in the time of the judges. King David fought a number of different wars, but under Solomon there was peace. 40 years of peace. You don't find any wars that Solomon fought. And here was the first time that the borders really opened up, and Solomon allowed all of these foreign influences, to come in. I mean, it's an interesting idea that what did it bring? It brought, the Talmud is always going to bend over backwards to say that Solomon did not sin.
Yeah.
It was not a sin. The women that he married, he probably converted them, whatever conversion was at that time. He probably, converted them to Judaism. His short-sightedness was that he allowed them to go back to their foreign service. So therefore they brought him back. They brought idolatry back, and they brought all of this worship, cult worship back, and he didn't have that kind of a strong personality enough to squash it.
Right.
That's what angered God. Not that he himself, God forbid, worshipped an idol, and he went on, but it was considered because he didn't put a kibosh on what his wives were doing and bringing. When just if you think about it, if the royal palace is full of these people that are worshiping idols and are bringing in paganism, you can imagine that. It's like perfume, you can't just isolate it into the palace. It's going to spread throughout the entire. It's going to spread throughout the entire land, and people are going to get influenced by this. And this is where God's anger came to Solomon and said to him, "You know what? You're the wisest person. You were at the highest heights. I mean, you built the temple. You were the one that established, the sovereignty of God here on earth in a permanent manner. Versus the tabernacle that was moving from place to place." And now so what? It shows that history repeats itself.
Yeah.
I mean, you allow foreign influence no matter where it is. If you think about a society, you think about a community, you think about anything. And here in the United States of America, if you had to learn a lesson, what to bring up, the Satmars would say to you, this is a perfect example of what happens when you open up your community to foreign influences.
Right.
You allow foreign influences in. You allow a television into your home. What you're bringing in is literally idolatry. That's what's going on. Others will argue this, the same way. You give your child a smartphone. What you're doing is you're bringing an idolatry into your home. You're opening up to society because normal cultural societies are not going to be so in tune with Torah values. I mean, we haven't found really one. I mean, I don't think America, as much as we talk about the Judeo-Christian values, but America is a secular society. America is not a religious society. It's a secular society where people believe in God.
Yeah.
We don't have a national church. We don't have a national pope. We probably have hundreds of different Christian denominations here in the United States of America, and we as Jews have always been a minority, and the minority is always susceptible to the outside influences. Visa Christel Zach Yidelzach, the historian Rabbi. What was his name? Beryl Wine used to always say, we think as Jews that we are trendsetters, or we think that we set the pace, but then Christians and Gentiles follow us. It's exactly the opposite, he says. He said, Christelzach, the way the Christian community goes, that's how the Jewish community goes, the much larger community. And if you bring in those kind of influences, this is going to be the end result. I mean, but it's hard. It's murder. I mean, to isolate yourself. I mean, even the Satmars who try the best of their ability to keep the outside world, they succeed to a certain degree, but it's not foolproof because you have to actually walk the streets. You're involved in business with others, so it's very, very difficult.
You can't live in a bubble.
But this story is like what do you call that story? It's like it's a warning. It's a warning story. But this is what happens even to the greatest. Even to the greatest of Solomon, the wise man, the builder, incredibly rich, powerful. If you allow yourself that, and it must have gotten to him. I mean, how everyone says to you, you're so great, and 700 wives and 300 concubines. That may be a little excessive. I'm not saying, I'm not judging him, but 1,000
Sounds
women.
Reasonable.
I mean, 1,000 women, you may have said maybe like 50%. 500 maybe would have been, but he did it, and what the end result was that God, in the time of the Bible, his patience doesn't last very long. It didn't last very long against Saul, and it didn't last very long against Solomon. And he said, "Thank you, it's over for you, but because your father was David, and for what he did for me, I'm not going to cut you out completely, but I'm only going to cut out 10 tribes, and you keep 1 or 2, Judah and Benjamin." And that's what happens. I mein, it's just it's a sad story because it was going so well. Ishtachas Gavna, Ishtachas Tenose. Everybody had what they needed, both in the physical realm and the spiritual realm. We were cooking. We were doing so great at that time, and then it falls apart. But again, I'm just going to go back to the Talmud to say that Solomon, he did not worship idols. It was not. He was not an idol worshiper. Didn't turn against God. It was his reluctance to rein in his wives and to get rid of this. This is what happened.
It's interesting because when you were away a couple weeks ago, I stepped up to speak in Shul for you, and I mentioned it was the parsha of Sarah and Abraham, and it talked a little bit about Sarah and why Sarah was particularly great. And one of the things that I was saying about her is that she took the initiative to say that Hagar and Ishmael were a bad influence in her home, and she felt that it was really dangerous for her family to have them there. And even though Abraham was upset, he loved them, he wanted them around, she said, no, they're bad for our family, they have to leave. And it's like I think it's a bit of a female instinct to know what's best for your family and what's not, but it's the same idea. Like when you recognize that there's a foreign influence and I know that the story with Hagar is a bit more complicated than that, but there's a way to read it that shows that Sarah was really just protecting her family. And I get it. I mean, it reminds me of this. Like our job as wives, mothers, and parents is to, and then as community leaders, if you want to broaden it a little bit, is to protect ourselves. And sometimes it's about keeping people out and not letting everyone in.
It's also similar to the parsha from last week with Esau and Jacob, and how Rebecca saw what the right thing to do was there, even though Isaac didn't see it. Rebecca saw who needed the blessing, and so it's a similar story, right? True. About the woman having better insights to the person, like who the inner belief system or the of who a person is than men necessarily do.
Right.
Yeah, Yeah, it's a difficult thing. I mean, you talk about protection of the family, and I know that Jay would do anything to protect his daughter. And when we think about protection, it's like he's going to protect her, or we're going to protect our kids by keeping them safe at home.
Yeah.
But there's one part that we kind of sometimes we overlook is friends.
Yeah.
You see, because we don't think of friends as being protective. So you invite people over, or she invites people over, or our brothers invited people over. And as parents, you have to be vigilant. You got to know what's going on in your kids' lives.
Yeah.
You can't just imagine because they hit 13 or 14 or 15 that they're now young adults and they know the right thing and they're going to make the right decisions, because there's no faster way to destruction than with bad people. And when you hook up with bad friends in high school or junior high, there's no quicker way to ruin your life than with these people. And a lot of times parents, don't want to get involved because they feel that they're overreaching. You know what? I'm going to start dictating to my son or my daughter who they can see, who they can't see. They're going to start calling me names, you're this, you're that. But you know what? I'd rather be called a schmo and have a healthy son than be called, my good friend, and have a sick son.
Yeah.
And then, and do that. But we think of ourselves like Solomon, I'm popular, your kid's popular, invited to all the parties and you're so excited, the kid's so happy with it. But, we go into these parties, what's going on over there. Liquor is being served and, God forbid, other worse things than liquor are being served. So parents, if you read this story of Solomon and his family, you got to be extremely vigilant, because even someone as strong as Solomon and with all the power, didn't take care of business. Ultimately didn't take care of business. And so for us, our family will suffer. For someone as national as him, I mean, with an great big personality, just he changed the way the Jewish people prospered.
Yeah.
I mean, it was forever torn apart. Now
really
the kingdom,
That's
so
a really good
and
point.
here's the next. I mean, I'm sorry. Do you want to go on, or
we can move on.
So what God does is he tells Achia, one of the great prophets of the time, that I'm tired of Solomon and I want to really just take the kingdom from him, but because of David, I'll let him hang on to the tribe of Judah plus Benjamin. And he appoints Jeroboam ben Nevat. He goes, go find this guy from the tribe of Ephraim, Jeroboam ben Nevat. He's a good guy, and you're going to tell him and he tracks him down, and he appoints him as the king. He says, just not yet. Don't worry about it. God was angry at Solomon, but you're going to be a good guy. You're going to take care of business, and you're going to have 10 tribes. It's so interesting. This is so interesting, because in the beginning, when we look at this guy, Jeroboam ben Nevat, he is pleasing in the eyes of the Lord, which means that God finds him humble. God finds him, faithful. God finds him that he relies on him and he trusts him that he's going to do a good thing. Jeroboam ben Nevat doesn't approach Achia Shloini and says, "Look, I want to start a revolt."
Right.
He gets appointed first. Solomon passes away, and then his son takes over. Now he's not
Solomon's son.
Rehoboam. So Rehoboam and Jeroboam. And there's a lot of people that mix up the two. Not to be confused, because in the Torah, the names are just sometimes so confusing. The names, because in one place they call them one way, and another place they call them another way. So Rehoboam and Jeroboam. Rehoboam is Saul's son. He takes over Solomon's son. I'm sorry. You see, there again,
yes.
Solomon's son. He takes over the kingdom. And he's the king. And he says, okay, how am I going to deal with these people? What am I going to do? So the elders tell him, listen, you know what? Look, your father taxed the people, had a big retinue, this and all of that stuff. Take it easy, relax, calm down. If you show them some kindness, be smart. Don't overreach. You know what? Then you'll be okay. People will follow you. You're still the Solomon's son. His young friends tell him, forget that. Squash these people. Just literally grind them into dust. Tell them that, my little finger is greater than my father's thigh. I'm going to deal with you. Yeah, that was good advice. Good. No, that was
my God.
that was horrible
I haven't
advice.
heard that song in a long time.
No, that was what's his name?
That's Alan Sherman,
right? Alan Sherman song.
I don't even know that song.
That what? Do you remember that song, Jay?
No.
Oh, that was he has a whole song about all these creations, and then the chorus is, and
advice.
That was good advice. Good advice. Thank you.
Yeah.
And he took that advice, and guess what? The people revolted. They followed Jeroboam and Nevat, and here was again a moment when the sun started to rise. We thought here Jeroboam and Nevat, appointed by Achia Shalini, he is going to be now the savior of the Jewish people. Rehoboam and his band, they're going to stick to Jerusalem with Benjamin, a small little two tribes. Who cares? But the rest of Israel is going to flourish under Jeroboam, and and here is another issue that comes to play that we can talk about is when power comes to you. Once you get into power, the old expression, I don't know who said this first, but when power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And this is what happened to Jeroboam. Jeroboam started out okay with God. Expectations were very, very high. But what he did was ultimately started to believe in himself. And when you start to believe in yourself, things go south very quickly. And he wanted to really separate the Jewish people from the southern kingdom of Judah. They were called the northern kingdom of Israel. And and he set up guards not to let people to go to Jerusalem for Oila Regel, and then for the holidays. And he changed the holiday of Sukkot from the 7th month to the 8th month, and he set up idols for people to come and worship. And he goes down in history as not only not being one of the most successful and reliable and righteous kings, he goes down as being like the paragon of sinner. Not only did he sin, but he caused others to sin. He sinned and caused others to sin. So there's a lot of people in the Bible that are sinners, okay? But you know what? But to cause others to sin, and how bad is he? When you go to Pirkei Avos, and when you go to the ethics of our sages, and you look at them, and they want to show the the yin and yang, the zelu mozeh, the equilibrium. Who do they put against Jeroboam? Moses.
No.
So that's how bad he is, because if you put Moses on one side of the scale for goodness, and you're on the other side of the scale for wickedness, you are like at the bottom of the barrel. They don't put Jeffrey Klein, the accountant, like on one side of the scale,
and Moses
and Jeroboam. Okay. So Jeffrey Klein, all right, nothing wrong with Jeffrey Klein. I know Jeffrey Klein.
There's 575 Jeffrey
Kleins, but you know what?
Maybe more.
A nice guy and a good guy, but you put him up against Moses so Moses is the ultimate in goodness, and you're the ultimate in wickedness. And this is again another lesson for us to learn about how we have to keep perspective. I mean, how difficult it is when you get into that position and you're sitting on the throne, that you have to simply say to yourself, you know what? I can't believe that I'm here. And I'm here for a purpose, and my purpose is to fulfill God's destiny. That means that I have to keep the people honest, and I have to keep them safe, and I have to keep them righteous, and I have to do everything I can, because it's not me. It has nothing to do with me. The moment I start believing that it's actually me, God chose me because I'm a special person, that's when you start losing it, and then leadership. If you don't have good leadership, it's just devastating. And that's like ChayaLeah had said before, that this was the beginning of the end. We don't see it yet. But ultimately we're gonna, the first temple is gonna fall, and then, eventually the others.
It's really annoying how short of a time frame we had for the good times. Like, it's really annoying. I mean, we finally get settled in Jerusalem, settled in the land of Israel. We defeat our enemies, and then we're like, yay, we build a temple, and then boom. We start fighting. It's just so, I don't know, it's kind of depressing about human. It's just depressing about how humans are.
It was
and also God, I'm sorry. Like, God is, he needs a little more patience. He's so impatient with us.
The thing, listen, he does stop a civil war. They were going to go to war with each other early on, with 180,000 men, ready to do battle against the northern kingdom. And he tells them, calm down. Okay, settle down. I mean, don't go to battle. But what happens is, I mean, okay, now the kingdoms are divided, and just they never get back together again. Unfortunately, there's never going to be a united kingdom until Mashiach comes.
It's crazy.
But that's basically what happens, with them.
Jay, do you want to jump in?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, because I have a theological question, actually, that's a bit, it's a bit complicated, and I don't know which direction this will go in. But when I was reading through part of the story, I noticed 2 times that it says, it talks about God stirring up the enemies of the Jewish people and causing the kings or whoever or the other people to attack the Jews. So, for example, I think it's in, let me see, what
you see in 11:23.
Yeah,
and God raised up against him as adversary.
Right, and God stirred up another antagonist against Solomon. Okay, so we see it a few times in the story that Hashem is causing, based on the text here, that it's using language that God is causing our enemies to, be upset and whatever. So, I mean, this raises a lot of theological questions for me because, first of all, what does that mean about free will for our enemies? That's one question, right? Like, what role do they actually play? Can we even call them evil if Hashem is causing them to agitate the Jewish people? Like, how can we blame them? Right? That's number one. And then number two, I guess it's easier to look at it in the context of the Torah, but like, what if you apply that to modern day times? And I mean, this gets really complicated because if I start thinking, like, was Hashem agitating Hitler against us? And so, that's why, for something, or I know it's a complicated question, but that's where my head went.
Can I comment?
Yeah,
first?
go.
Comment first. Okay.
Yeah.
So 2 things. There's 2 points that we have to bring up over here. So number one, let's take this guy Razan. Okay. Ben Eliada. Okay. So this guy Razan. I would say if I was sitting with Razan, he would have been the Nick Fuentes of his time.
Yeah.
Meaning that he was no lover of Jews at his time.
Okay.
Meaning that God does not stir up somebody who's, you know what, I'm going to take like a nice guy like Thomas Jefferson and turn him into this rabid anti-Semite to kick the Jews out of America.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
Okay.
What happens is when God stirs somebody up, meaning that they already have the propensity towards this.
Okay.
Meaning, like, you know what? We're already a hater of Jews, but may be the right time. So God puts into their mind certain thoughts and certain ideas. Does not take away from their free choice ultimately, even when God stirs you up. But still, it's not a matter of where God has taken nice, wonderful people and just, Now, sometimes God does that. God does that through prophets and others, where God says, you know what, you have to go and warn the people, and and He'll do that. But generally, when you go to war against the Jewish people, it's generally because you're not a friend of theirs, and God uses that enmity against them, ready to either hasten the process, where let's say you were going to go to war in a year, He makes you go to war now, or the intensity, and the intensity is really where it comes to play. Because even if you come out there and say to yourself, hey, you know what, I am God's agent, like let's say Pharaoh could have said to God, why are you doing this to us? You swore to Abraham, you were the one that swore to Abraham that 400 years your children will be destined to be in a foreign land. So they're in a foreign land. What do you want from me? I didn't keep him here. You kept him here. As far as I'm concerned, they could have gone 200 years ago. Let's say if you count the 400 years, I mean, Jews. No. So what's the problem? What's the answer to that is? So let's say even though I would have kept them in, you had to kill the kids.
Right.
You had to enslave them to such a degree. Even if I was keeping them here for a certain reason, that I didn't want them to establish Israel yet until Moses was born. Okay, so your job was to keep them here. Now what you did was you stepped over the line. You went over the line. You enslaved them. You killed them. You humiliated them. You tortured them. So same thing you mentioned about Hitler. Let's take Hitler. who to me is the absolute evil. But let's just take Hitler. Hitler could argue with you, nothing in the world happens without God's will. Is that true, Rabbi? Yes, that's true. So the 6 million were destined to die somehow. I'd have to say yes. I mean, otherwise, why would they say yes? Okay, so I was the one. Who asked you to?
Right.
Who asked you to do that? God, there's many agents that God has, to accomplish this. He could have brought he could have done that naturally. He could have done it otherwise. He could have done, who knows? And maybe at the end of the day, ultimately that decree would have been nullified. Who knows? Right. It could have been, maybe there was a decree that was early on against the Jewish people, and through the intercession of great tzaddikim or others, the decree is nullified. That's not your business. The fact that you took the initiative of opening these gas chambers and murdering innocent people, that's what you can't hide behind the fact that you said, I was just an agent of God, doing goodwill. And the same thing is true with our enemies today.
Right.
Our enemies today, well, whatever happens, these 1,400 people on October 7th were destined to die. Isn't that true, Rabbi? Well, yeah, I guess they were destined to die, but not by your hand. Who says by your hand? They were destined to die. God could have caused some other way. Right. Or maybe they would have lived if, somehow. So this idea of rousing up our enemies doesn't take away from free will. And even if you would say it does take away from free will, where they have to go to war, the intensity. I mean, we're fighting against the Jews. We might as well kill him kill them all out. That was not the intent. The intent was to give the Jews a warning shot. Right. What you did was you gave them a warning shot and then stabbed them in the heart.
Right.
So
no, that makes sense.
I think you have to take that into. We have to take those things into consideration, because generally. Now, again, someone may say, "But Rabbi, what about A, B, and C who are nice people and God roused them up?" That could be, but generally, overall, you see who goes to war against Israel are the neighbors, and the neighbors are not such great people.
Right.
Nobody likes their neighbors.
Good answer. That's a good answer. It was bothering me last night when I was reading it. I'm like, but you're right. I mean, he didn't take randos to do it. It was people who already hated the Jews, probably, or were already bad people or whatever, and caused them in that direction. It's a good answer.
And we've had the conversation about free will in the past also, right? So it's
tricky. The free will is a bit tricky, because there are things that are predestined, and there are things that we have free will, and where those intersect is interesting. It's complicated. Right. It's complicated.
Right. But it's like you said, though, Rabbi, there are people who are predetermined is probably not the right word, but who would tend to do certain activities based on, their belief system and based on their nature. So, God might select them for their potential to do these things, knowing that they might do these things, but you never know if he selects people and they don't do the things because they don't do the things. So those things don't get recorded, right? But he knows, in somebody's soul and in their experience, what their tendencies would be.
Yeah. He just pushes them along. That's all you really need to do to people, is just give them the opportunity.
Well, I guess that goes to my next question then, which is, so as a Jewish people, first, like, forget the evil people who are committing the atrocities, right? But what do we as the Jews have to do when the bad things are happening to us, right? So when there was a temple and there were prophets and, Isaiah or Jeremiah are screaming and yelling, or Elijah, as we're going to see soon, are yelling about what should happen, it's easy to understand what the Jews should have done. But like today, for example, I hate when people say, oh, well, you have to follow Torah mitzvahs, or you have to get along with each other. I mean, many Jews do get along with each other. Many Jews do follow the Torah. Like, what's our obligation, like, in terms of understanding God's message to us through sort of the bad things that happen to us? Or is there no, or is
no, there's definitely a message.
There is a message.
Of course, there's a message. There's nothing random. The Rambam writes, and Maimonides writes, in his book of law, not in his book of philosophy, but in his book of law, that when bad things happen to a community, There's a message being sent. And anyone who says that this is coincidental is cruel, because then you'll never really get to the bottom of it. So God forbid if there's a small community that is experiencing some kind of suffering, whether it's a drought, whether it's a wild animals, whether it's children passing, whatever the circumstances are, Maimonides goes through a series of things that need to be done in the community. You need and it's all surrounded about reflection and repentance. So there's obviously something happening to us. What's going wrong? So we have to, you have to daven more. Sometimes you have to fast. Sometimes you have to give more charity.
Right.
So there's no question about it that religious leaders throughout history have always said that there is, if something bad is happening to us, we need to really reflect upon ourselves and what we need to do. Well, number one, you have to stop the bad things happening to you. So if there's a war, you got to fight the war. That's number one. Okay, that's you can't just say, hey, okay, they murdered 1,400. Okay, so let's just not do anything about it. No, you have to. Now we have the opportunity to do something about it. You have to stop that. But number two is equally as important to Judaism is this idea of reflection and repentance. That we have to look into ourselves and say, why was it that we even experienced something like this? Is it because God is angry with us? Is it because something that we can do better? I mean, and certainly we can do better. Right. I mean, there's nothing to talk about. We unfortunately don't see the quid pro quo like you're talking about, where you say, hey, you know what? If we only davened better or gave more charity, things would go swimmingly well, for us. And unfortunately, it tells us in the Talmud and in Jewish in Jewish scripture that when the angel of death is released, he doesn't just differentiate between the good and the bad. He's not. That's not his job. He comes and he hits everybody. Right. So you may say to yourself, but I happen to be a good guy. I know, but I'm just sent here to do what I'm supposed to do, and so the good suffer with the bad. But that's a discussion for another time. But you had mentioned, about about people that were trying to. I mean, if you go through the next few chapters, it's all about just different kings and alliances they made in this. I think it would pay maybe if we jump just a few chapters ahead to Elijah, because he is the next.
But before we get there, there's one kind of minor thing that I thought was very interesting.
Sure.
So when you go to chapter 14, verse 25, it talks about Nabad succeeding Jeroboam. And there's a line that talks about in the 5th year of King Rehoboam. I know I'm butchering his name.
Okay.
Rehoboam, King Shishak of Egypt marched against Jerusalem.
Right.
And what's interesting about that is that in the 18th century, in Egypt, in Luxor, there was an area called the Karnak Temple Complex that was discovered by archaeologists. And within that complex, there was an area called the Bubastite Portal Relief. And on that had all of the military victories of King Shishak of Egypt. Yeah. And so it's a relief. So a relief is carved into stone. Right. That's what relief means. And around this time period, so a lot of the writings were not legible anymore. So they actually couldn't translate this until about 100 years later, when they discovered the Rosetta Stone and translated that, and they were able to interpret hieroglyphics. But some of the areas that were legible in the relief were Megiddo, Gibeon, Arad, Soka, and Moab.
Wow.
And so Jerusalem either wasn't there or it wasn't legible anymore. But all of those towns, all of the cities in the area are right surrounding it. So either he wasn't successful conquering Jerusalem, or it was it was illegible by the time that the archaeologist came. But I just thought that was interesting that is a event in the Bible that is backed up by contemporaneous non-biblical sources.
Wow.
Because
I love that.
It's interesting because commentaries say that Shishak was not his real name. That he was called Shishak because Shoikik, he longed. What did he long for? He longed for Solomon's throne. That's what he wanted. He wanted Solomon's throne. Now, this was, if you're following the story, Solomon was his son-in-law because Solomon had married his daughter.
Oh, right.
Right. So he was the king of Egypt. So they say this was Pharaoh Necho, that came and took the throne, with him. So it's interesting you mentioned about Shishak here, but other commentaries say it's not. The connection between Shishak and Pharaoh is not so. We don't find really a reference of Shishak being called Pharaoh Necho, but just that's.
But I mean, if they have it there, then there was definitely an Egyptian king who fought.
Oh, they definitely fought.
Yeah,
they definitely fought,
and they found proof of it.
Yeah, it's too bad they didn't find the throne.
I know.
No, but the throne was later taken back. I mean, it went through a series of went from here to there. Even the Persians had the throne, and
right.
They found evidence of this pharaoh. I guess in Egyptian it was Shishak, I guess. But there was a 20-year military campaign he went on from 945 to 925 BC.
Wow.
That's
the right years.
Sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So I thought that was interesting that's an event, a biblical event that is supported by a fairly early biblical events that's supported by non-biblical contemporaneous sources.
So
but
then,
anyway, I thought that was interesting.
I love that. That's great. I wish it would be nice if it would all just line up nicely with each other.
Right.
All the history. And I took a class last year on the book of Jeremiah, and we read through a lot of the chronicles of the Babylonian chronicles that are left that no one was able to read for, millennia because it was an Akkadian, but now they can. And it actually sheds a lot of light on the book of Jeremiah. When you read them next to each other, it lines up. I mean, the wars, the same wars, the same battlefields, the same kings' names. Like there's a lot of, and the Assyrians, like it's just really, it makes it richer, not that we need it to believe in it anyway, but it just it creates a richer narrative.
But it's like we talked about before that some people come to belief just from faith, and some people come to it more from logic.
Yeah,
and I think all like this sort of evidence, I think is really important to. Especially, I'm sure you guys have had discussions with people, because I've had these discussions with people who say, "Oh, well, the Bible's all made up. Like it's all just like all these, it's just all these stories." And then you start saying, "Well, all this archaeological evidence that supports, is the exact story of Abraham and Isaac exactly what happened? Who knows?"
Right.
But to say the entire thing is made up is just belied by the archaeological evidence. And especially when you consider the fact that, where most of these most important events happened, we don't even have access to.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't do archaeological digs
right now,
and Hebron and Shiloh and in Bethlehem and these places. I mean, you think, I think I mentioned this book Right. Yeah. Right. Temple Mount. But I think I mentioned this book in the past. It was a book called When Stones Speak, which is a history of the development of the city of David archaeological projects.
Wow.
And he tells a story. I'm trying to blank on the author's name, but he tells a story that they had identified this parking lot where they thought the city of David continued underneath, and they were trying to buy it. And this secret buyer came in and offered them like 4 times the amount of money that it was worth. And, long story short, I think we can all probably guess who was trying to buy it and cover it up. So anyway, they ended up, reasoning with the owners, and they end up selling it to Israel just out of the goodness of their heart. But I mean, can you imagine in these areas where we don't have access to?
Yeah,
like everything that's been what's there and what's been destroyed in all likelihood.
Yeah.
It's
yeah, for sure.
Depressing.
I subscribe to magazine Bar, Biblical Archaeological Review, and it's way beyond me. I mean, the articles there are just way, way, way beyond. I mean, they're digging all over Israel and finding these things. This is not a religious magazine by any shape or form. I mean, nothing. I mean, they are secular and they're scientists, and and they don't buy into this whole business of the Torah. But what I was able to glean is that they're historians, kind of, that break into two. One that just regardless of what they're going to find, it's just not going to be enough to say that it has any validity to the story of the Bible. That the Bible was written way later, by people like in Isaiah's times, and there's nothing to it. Then there's the others who say you can't claim that the Bible is completely accurately historical, but you can't deny it either. Like you were saying, Jay. You can't deny it either. How much you can take from it, that's a series of debates. You want to take a little of it, the true, or a lot of it is true, but you can't discard completely the Bible. But others just discard it completely. When they'll find something, so what? She says, so the guy wrote the story afterwards. I mean, so what? The name, you find a name there, and you find a name in the Bible, Shishak. So great. Mazel tov. Right. So it's like if I were write a story, about the Civil War. The Civil War's got to be real. Why? Because Perlmutter mentioned a name, John Goodman, and fighting for the South. Okay, sure. You wrote the story afterwards, and you recreated it. Something like that. But but there's no question about it. There's no question about it. There's so much in Israel that could be uncovered, but it's probably never going to be uncovered because of the present political situation that's going on over there.
So just to get back, we'll finish off with this part. So there were a lot of, the chapters that we skip over are basically just king after king.
The wars they fought.
They were mostly really bad guys. And the kingdom of Israel had more kings than the kingdom of Judah. They seemed to last longer, those kings. And it's interesting because I found notes that I wrote from years ago when I taught this. And there's like a formula for how the text introduces the kings, and it's different between the kings of Judah and the kings of Israel. With the kings of Judah, it always mentions the mother's name, and not so with the kings of Israel, which I thought was interesting. And I wonder if the reason is because we're basically laying out the lineage, right? The Davidic lineage all the way down, and so knowing who the mother is, I guess, was important.
That's interesting.
Even in those times. I don't know if you have another explanation for that, but it's no, I've stumped you.
No, what? I'm sorry. I was thinking about. I was thinking of something else at the time.
I said something so brilliant.
I know. You.
The most brilliant thing I've ever said.
You said something about Davidic lineage. Was the mothers or something like that?
Never mind.
What did you say, ChayaLeah?
It wasn't that interesting.
No, what was it?
I was saying that quickly, that the kingdom, like when they introduced the kings of kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah, with the kingdom of Judah, they always mention the mother's name of the king, and not so with the kingdom of Israel. So I'm wondering if maybe it's because we're trying to keep a deep and strong, like, Davidic lineage from David all the way.
But why would it be the women? Why would
it
matter? Why would it matter about the women?
Right. Why are the mothers mentioned?
I don't know.
Well, that's my point. It's because that's the most important part, is who the mother was.
Because
rather than
the father? I mean, it came out father. Okay. Now that makes sense.
You're saying no.
I don't know.
Yeah, okay, fine.
I don't know. We'd have to do more research on that.
Wow.
On that part.
That went well.
Yes. That was good.
I'm glad we went through that twice.
I just found it interesting.
That's good. No, it's a good point. It's a good point.
So we're all right. So we're gonna go to Ahab. And Jezebel.
And Jezebel, two interesting characters. This Jezebel and Achav are just bad people, and they introduced a tremendous amount of idolatry, and and Elijah was like the perfect foil for them. Because here was a guy that would broker. He just didn't have much. I can just imagine who he was. Doesn't have much patience, for these people. Very, very, very judgmental in everything. saw the world in black and white. I mean, you're either with us or you're not with us. You could forget about it. You can't be both. And the perfect foil for these people who literally wanted to introduce, not only wanted to, but actually introduced new idolatry into the Ashtaroth, the tree worship, all of these, the Baal supporting the false prophets. I mean, and then you have this guy Elijah, Eliyahu Navi, that is just their enemy, and is causing so many difficulties for them, in their plan to cleanse up Israel into this and turn it into this idolatrous state where he causes a famine to happen and no rain, then he has to be on the run, and he runs into the mountains and all of these things. But what I would love just to mention, just to stop for a few minutes, is one episode. It's the episode of him versus the Baal the prophets. That takes place in chapter number 18.
Okay.
Chapter number 18. This is, again, he had many miracles happen to him when the ravens brought him the food.
He brought back a child to life.
Back from life. I mean, he was a miracle worker, and he was a true prophet of this monotheistic God that we call God in our language. And eventually he decides himself, look, to fight them one by one is going to take too much time, too much effort. Who knows what's going to happen. I'm just going to challenge them all at once. And he tells this to the king and queen. He says, I want you get your best. I'm going to show up. Let's go to Har Carmel. Well, then we'll see. If you're right, you're right. If you're not right, you're not right. Okay? Sorry about that.
Hashem sending you a message.
If you're right, you're right. If you're not right, you're not right. Whatever it'll be. Okay? So they say, okay. They say, fine. Let's go. Let's do it. So they get 400 Nevi'ei Baal. They get 400 of these false prophets. They come to Mount Carmel. And Elijah says to them, hey, listen, this is what we're going to do. You bring a sacrifice, I'll bring a sacrifice. Whatever happens, happens. If you want to, your God is going to accept it, you're going to be the ones. If my God accepts it, I'll be the ones. They agree. Elijah says, look, you're more. You go first. You go first, and you bring your sacrifice. So they get up there. They build an ark. They build an altar. They bring a sacrifice. Nothing happens. They pray, they laugh, and then Elijah introduced something called trash talking. He introduces trash talking to the world.
Yes.
Okay, the first trash talker. He says, hey, you know what? Scream a little louder. Maybe he's sleeping. Maybe he's off. Go after them. Look, if you want to know where Muhammad Ali got his trash talking, skills from, he took it from Elijah. He took it from Elijah, and Elijah's doing this over and over again, and he's telling them A, B, C, and D. Go after him, but they try all day, they try, they pray, they gnash themselves, they do everything they possibly can. Nothing happens. Comes in the afternoon, they say, we're done. Obviously, nothing's going on. Why don't you go? Elijah does the most curious things. He tells his servants to build a furrow around the altar, fills it up with water. Right. Then he brings a sacrifice. Boom. Next thing you know, God brings the sacrifice. The people who he was trying to impress were not the idol worshippers. He didn't care about those. I mean, the prophets. He was worried about the Jewish people who were all gathered over there. And next thing you know, Hashem hu Elokim, Hashem hu Elokim. The God is the true God. God is the true God. So Elijah wins the first pay-per-view ever in the history of mankind, where he invites everybody from around the world to come and view this, and he's successful, and he wins it, and everybody is then just overcome with this incredible, faithfulness right now to Hashem. And Elijah thinks to himself, complete.
This is it, right?
He did it. And it's interesting because that should have been enough, where he showed everybody so clearly, we know what's going on, that great, what? God is God, and then we don't have to worry about these false prophets anymore, and let's get going. Mm-hmm. Where's the next? What happens the next thing? Next thing you know, he's being chased out of town, and like he finds himself now in the mountains hiding.
Aww.
And people always asked about this story. What happened here? How did it go so quickly from one place to another place? We're on a high. I mean, here was Elijah was literally you couldn't bring a better circumstance than this. How was this even possible?
One thing we should also probably mention, I don't think you mentioned it. Sorry if I missed it.
No, go ahead, please.
But we should mention that after the false prophets fail the test, Elijah has all the prophets killed.
Right,
Mhm.
right.
Yeah.
Well, that's biblical,
Right.
of course. I mean, there's got to be some death somewhere, around
But I
that.
think it's an important context that Jezebel doesn't have him pursued just because he trash talks their God and proved that he was a false god. She actually had all of her people killed by whoever.
Right.
So what? It's frustrating to me because I think to myself, like, if we all gathered at the Rose Bowl and God performed some open miracle that proved that he's real and that everything else is false, I want to believe that we would all walk away from it satisfied. Changed and satisfied, and like, okay, this is it.
Okay.
And you're telling me basically, and through the story, that even when you see proof in front of your eyes, humans still mess up and still can't seem to get the message.
Well, the thing is like this. This is another example of where miracles don't change people. Miracles are wonderful markers, meaning you'll stand there and you'll think to yourself, my God, what did I just experience? I saw something that was completely out of context, out of nature. I wasn't expecting this. Then all of a sudden I see this happening.
Yeah.
I see this happening. So it's great. And markers are important in people's lives because, it gives them a sense of, like getting out of their doldrums or whatever circumstances they find themselves in. But ultimately, change comes slowly to people. If you're an idolater, it takes a long time for you to get rid of that kind of thing. And we know this from the time of the Jews coming out of Egypt, where they saw God giving the Torah, and the next thing you know, they build a golden calf.
Right.
You could find parallels to this story. Here was another miracle, and then next thing you know, Elijah's being chased away, and where was everybody to save him? Doesn't mean that there weren't people that didn't come back to Yiddishkeit. There probably were, but markers. But miracles generally are good markers. They don't change you completely. I mean, they should. Like you say, like you see something, you can't deny this. No, they should, but they don't.
Right.
So you still need, besides the miracles, you need a lot of work on yourself to get rid of all of the bad habits that you've been carrying around with you. Miracles will help, but only to a certain degree.
There's also something about actually recognizing that what you witnessed was a miracle.
Yeah.
Because you look at all of these David Copperfields and all of these sleight of hand people and these mentalists and whatever, they're not performing miracles. Like there's a trick, and they're very good at the trick, but it's a trick that's explainable.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure, like when you think back about this event with Elijah versus the Baal false prophets,
correct,
right? I could envision myself standing there and saying, what's the trick? There's a trick here.
Right.
Like there was something, there's something he did here that caused this to happen.
Yeah.
Right. And so there is just something about recognizing that what you witnessed is actually what it is, and that it's not a trick.
That's really true.
No, that's for sure.
It's funny because I hate magic for that reason. I hate it. I don't enjoy it. I don't find it funny or relaxing. The entire time I'm like, I know you're just tricking me right now. So I just don't, I'm stupid. Like, I just don't know what you're doing, but like, I don't enjoy it. Some people love it. Baruch loves mentalist or magic. And I just, I can't.
I actually appreciate it for that reason.
Really?
Because, because they're very skilled at what they're doing. Like they're not what they claim to be. Right. But they're very skilled at what they're doing.
Right.
So I appreciate on that level.
No, that's very true. what Jay's saying, because in today's day and age, you're going to be hard fought to find a real miracle.
Right.
When you say, you know what, like, now we say, like, you know what, oh, it was the miracle that the hostages came home. It was we've seen a miracle, but was it really a miracle? I mean, you could rationalize it in 100 different ways.
Yeah.
You know, Hamas kept them because they were bargaining chips. I mean, Israel was eventually going to put the pressure on. Then Turkey squeezed them, whatever the circumstances were, and they let them go. I mean, is that a miracle? I mean, if God put, you know, the thoughts into Erdogan's head.
But it's funny you're saying that, because I could argue the opposite way, right? Like, I could argue that most of us are walking around thinking like, okay, it was a diplomatic, move on the part of Trump and all the other countries, and Hamas had no choice. And so eventually it makes sense. But I find that case in particular is one where I think to myself, no, there was a divine hand that was involved in that, because there's no way I believed before it happened that the last 20 hostages were ever going to walk out of there alive. And so you're right. I could look at it and say, whatever. I mean, this was diplomacy, and that, you know, they just pushed them hard enough. Or in this case, what I believe is that actually we did witness a miracle, because there is no way that all those pieces coming together could have happened without Hashem's hand somehow. You know, why should Trump care? Why did Turkey capitulate? Why did Qatar come to the table? I mean, all the different pieces. I don't know. That to me is an easier one to say, like, we witnessed a miracle. I don't know if we did, but again, I'm saying
this is going back to what Jay says.
Yeah.
You have to realize and can say to yourself, what I've seen right now is a miracle.
Right.
I mean, it's something. How would we define a miracle?
Right.
Something that is unnatural.
Right.
You know, there's a natural process. There's rules and regulations. The world is run like by mechanics.
Right.
I mean, you know, the sun never rises in the west. You never wake up in the morning and the sun is coming up in the west and setting in the east. Okay, everything is mechanical. Everything works together like in a certain process. What you're saying is that God chose to go outside of this, of the rules and boundaries of nature, and cause what we would say a miracle. Mm-hmm. Okay, so like I'm totally agreeing to what Jay says. You have to realize you have to recognize that this was a miracle. And I'm saying in today's day and age, it's harder.
Yeah,
it's harder.
It is hard. It's really hard.
Because if it was hard for people at the time of the splitting of the Red Sea to recognize it, you know, and say, okay, finally, this is a miracle, but 2 minutes later, forget about it. You know, today's day and age, which is run, sort of according to the rules of nature. But I think we'll have to pick up that story next week.
But before we finish, I think can we just finish Elijah's story? So I think there's a very important part here that we'd be remiss if we skipped over.
I know which one. It's the stillness.
So basically, Jezebel is sending her troops to go find Elijah to kill him, and he goes and hides out in a cave. And so this is from chapter 19, verses 11 to 13. Right. And he says, "Come out," he called, "and stand on the mountain before God. And lo, God passed by. There was a great and mighty wind, splitting mountains and shattering rocks by God's power, but God was not in the wind. After the wind, an earthquake, but God was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, fire, but God was not in the fire. And after the fire, a soft murmuring sound. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his mantle about his face and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. Then a voice addressed him. 'Why are you here, Elijah?'" And I think that's it's such a great section of the Bible, because I think I can't remember who said it, but I think it's a great quote that somebody said, "People don't see God because they don't look low enough."
Right.
And that's this, right? We're always looking for God in these big monumental events, but we don't look for him in just the mundane everyday things that happen to us.
Yeah. That's so true.
And so I think, in this time of, and this is, Elijah, who was a prophet and was in desperate need to find God because his life was at risk. Right. And And it took him, waiting for whatever that small murmuring sound was to find God, even though he was looking for him in these, monumental events. So right. I think that's a great, I think it's a great lesson for people to take to heart, is that
it's in a quiet moment.
God exists everywhere.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
That is beautiful.
That's beautiful. And then God says to him, "What are you doing here?" And then he says, "Like, your people, he admonishes the people, and that they're not following you." And God says, "What do you take it easy, relax." That's why Elijah comes to every bris, because he kept saying that your people have desecrated, they've abrogated your covenant, He says, "Watch, you're going to see. Don't be so judgmental. You're going to come to every bris to show that they haven't come."
And the Seder,
and the Seder,
right?
He comes to.
Right. So, Elijah,
but ultimately, who's going to be the one that is going to announce the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu is going to be Elijah. He's going to win, because he did fight for God, and he was a very, very loyal servant. And then next week we'll pick up his successor, Elisha.
And that, I think that wraps up First Kings, right?
First Kings.
Yeah. So next time
it's worth reading through, everybody, because we skipped a lot of great stories, and just to get the full flavor of Elijah and the importance that just the important figure that he was. It's worth reading through, because we skipped a lot, but we hopefully gave you the overall feeling.
I think in particular, the story of Ahab and Jezebel and Elijah is a great story.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Before we go, one announcement. If you're still with us, we are going to be doing our first Zoom live during Hanukkah. And so we are very excited. My father is finding out about this as he sits here with us, and all three of us will be on the Zoom, and you can ask us questions, and we can chat, and we can talk. And it's not just for paying subscribers, that will come later. But for now, we want to have a conversation and celebrate Hanukkah
with some
together.
of our friends.
Yeah, with some of our friends. We'll probably have to pay all our cousins to join, so that doesn't look empty, but show up.
So we think it's going to be December 16th, I believe.
Tuesday night.
Right?
Yeah.
All right. Tuesday night, December 16th.
Are you finished with your No?
No, I'm teaching that
just
night.
Kidding. It's not Tuesday night.
All right. I guess we're rescheduling.
When you say Tuesday night, what time? Maybe it's early for me.
Oh, yeah. We were going to do it at 5:00. Our time.
So
perfect. It is.
Okay.
Guys, you're in our meeting with us.
It's back on. It's back on.
5 is okay.
Okay, good.
So it'll be, December 16th.
It'll be an hour.
8 p.m.
And I believe at 6.
Okay.
8 p.m. Eastern time. And like ChayaLeah said, our first one will be for everybody. Yeah. After that, subsequent Zooms will be for our paid members. Yeah. But the first one will be open to everybody to whet your appetite to want more, or to not. I guess depending.
No.
We'll see how it goes.
We'll
see how it goes.
Yes. All right.
And you can ask my father any question you want. Anyway. Okay.
That's right.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Have a wonderful day. Great being with you guys.